Okay, well, I'm really excited that you guys are here, and we'll sort of just slowly work our way into this in case a couple more people want to pop in. My name's Robin Robertson. I am the owner and manager here at the Bellingham Training and Tennis Club, and we're just so excited to be a part of this Week of Wellness. And the Week of Wellness mission is to empower our community to gain new skills. And I have to read this, but I can't read it because I see you guys instead. Let me just move that out of the way. For gain new skills for movement, stress reduction, and self-care in a time of isolation and change. To connect with our community at large, to hold space for those in need of support, and to share our knowledge and expertise as an active service to Whatcom County businesses, individuals, and healthcare workers who may benefit from a regular self-care practice. Now, my self-care looks a little different than many people's self-care because I love to sweat. So I love stretching and mind-body exercises for sure, but there's nothing like getting your heart rate up and feeling that invigoration of a good cycling workout. So that's what I'm focusing on today. I put together this program for you so that you could understand a little more about how to set your bike up at home that will give you the very best fit and what kinds of things you should include when you're at home doing your own cycling workouts. So if this sounds like you, if you're looking for a motivating way to stay or to get in shape, you want to set up your bike correctly and become more comfortable. Or maybe think that your random rides are not the best, but you don't know what else to do, then you are in the right place. All right, so a little bit about our program that we offer here at the club. We have two different programs. We have the Cycle Moles program that's run since 2008, and we've helped hundreds of cyclists become stronger, smarter, more powerful cyclists so that you could take all of that outdoor and get out and ride and feel confident. And then we also have the Healthy Knees program. We offer that live here at the club, but also now offer the Healthy Knees formula online. It's a 16-week program that includes strength training and cycling in order to help your knees and your whole lower body chain become stronger. Okay, so I always like to have a plan of where we're going. We'll first start talking about getting smarter, about bike fit, body position, and pedal technique. We'll spend quite a bit of time this morning on those three things. And then we'll talk about getting stronger, the physiological systems that you want to train while you're on a bike, and how to become more powerful, how to make a plan so you're training at the right effort at the right time. And then a little bit about if you want to continue to train with me, how to go about doing that, and then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end. So if you have questions along the way, please type them into the chat. And I'll open that up at the end. I can't see the chat right now when I have the screen share on. So type your questions in and I'll be sure and address that at the very end in the Q&A. So just a little bit about how I came to love cycling and develop programs. There, especially the Cycle Moles program, and I'll tell you how that works and how you can make it work for you at home. I was tired of writing all out and being exhausted all of the time. I thought that was how you're supposed to train. Well, that's not always the best thing. And I had my bike mounted on a trainer in my basement, and I was tired of doing random workouts with watching some not very motivating videos. And then when it came time to perform, for many years I was a competitive cyclist, I just didn't feel like all the training that I'd done had added up to helping me all that much. So many years ago, before 2008, I put together a training plan, and that's what became Cycle Moles, and we launched that here at the club in 2008. So this is me. I'm Robin Robertson. I own the Bellingham Training and Tennis Club. I'm a certified personal trainer, USA cycling coach. I've authored 3 books. 3 of them are all about knees. 1 is about general fitness. I am certified in the SICI Bike Fit method, and I love to ride my bike, and I love helping other people ride their bike too and enjoy it. I ride a mountain bike, a road bike, a grocery getter, my commuter bike. I love being able to do adventure touring on a bike. That's probably my very favorite thing. Okay, so let's get into how to get smarter on your bike. We'll talk about bike fit here first. And there are some basic secrets on how to make sure that your bike fits you, whether it's your road bike, your mountain bike, or your stationary bike. All of these things are the same. Here are some indicators I want you to watch for and think about. When you're on your bike, if you have front of knee pain, and what I'm talking about here is right out front in your, on your patella, your kneecap, that can mean that your seat is too close to your handlebars. And is your quadricep tendon. You've got 4 big muscles in your thigh here. They wrap over the top of your knee. Your kneecap is embedded in that tendon, which attaches right here on your tibia. And that can strain by being too far forward. It puts strain on your patella. So if you're the front, then you'll want to move your seat away from the handlebars, and I'll show you how you can make that adjustment. If you have back of knee pain while you're pedaling or low back pain, that can mean that your seat is too high because you're overextending your legs in order to reach the pedals. If you have knee pain above your knee, so about here, that can mean that your seat is too low. And that's what I often see when I do bike fits for people, is that they come in with their seat too low. Okay, so the basic parameters here. When your pedal is as far away from the bike seat as it can be, you want about a 25 to 35 degree bend in your knee. That's not a huge bend. And it looks kind of like this. So just a slight bend. And before I show you how to adjust for that, if you have a stationary bike, this rule applies. It doesn't apply for a bike on a trainer because your bike is lifted off the ground. So if you have a stationary bike, here's what you can do. Stand next to your seat, poke your thumb in that fold where you lift up your leg. So this is right at your hip. Poke your thumb there, hold your hand out flat, and that's a good first guess for seat height. So right now you can see that I need to adjust my seat up. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust it up. It's not always 100% correct, but it gives you that first guess place. So now I'm going to do that again, poke my hip in that fold of where my leg meets my torso. That's your hip. You can feel your hip bone there as well. And my seat is now right at that height. So my hand is just gliding over the top. All right, next, when you get on your bike, you want to make sure that the ball on the pedal. So if you reach down and touch your bunion bone, and then you'll find that little toe bone out to the side, make sure that that is centered on the pedal. If you have toe cages and you're using that, you probably don't need to push your foot all the way to the end, setting the pedal more on your arch or behind the ball of your foot. So adjust it so that just the ball of your foot is on your pedal, and that's what you want to feel. Now for the seat height adjustments, now sit on the saddle as you would, and then push your pedal as far away from the seat as it can be. Typically that's about 5 o'clock. If noon was at the top, 6 o'clock at the very bottom, 5 o'clock is a little forward of that, and that's the farthest from hip to foot. Now you should have that slight bend. I wore these tight so you could see this bend in my knee here, slight bend. My knee is not locked straight. Here's the secret on how to check it. Because if you don't have a goniometer, a measuring device, you're not going to know. but take the ball of your foot off your pedal, and if you're on your bike right now, you can do this. Put your heel on the pedal, and now your legs should be straight without shifting your hips on the saddle. So when your leg is straight and your heel is on the pedal and your foot is parallel to the floor, you know you've got the right seat height. If your knee is still bent, that means your seat is a little too low. If you can't reach it without shifting your hips, that means your seat's a little too high. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions about that, make sure and put them in the chat and I'll get back to it at the end. Okay, the next part about your seat adjustment is your seat fore aft. Every bike has the ability to adjust the seat at the connects to the seat post. So when you're pedaling, this time you'll want to bring your pedals halfway down so that your feet are parallel to the floor. It's sometimes hard to see this on your own, so you might have somebody else look at your pedals, but your pedal arms should be parallel to the floor. Now, when you are in the cycling position, so you're hanging on your handlebars, you should be able to look over your forward foot, look over your forward knee, and be able to see the ball of your foot forward. If you can see more of your foot, I'm going to artificially scoot back on the seat here, pretending my seat was farther back. If you could see more of your foot, like I can see all the way to my laces now, I know my seat was too far back. If you can't see the ball of your foot because your knee is in the way, and maybe you can only see the tippy tips of your toes, then you know your seat's too far forward. And that's the riskier position in your bike setup. We want to make sure that that knee is pretty much just in line with the ball of your foot. If you were to hang a plumb bob, and this is what we do when we do bike fits for people for the Cycle Moles or the Healthy Knees program, I'd take a string with a weight on the end of it, a plumb bob, hang it off of your tibial bone right below your knee on the top of your shin, and it should hang right about where the pedal connects to the pedal arm, or 2 centimeters behind it. So you can go 2 centimeters in front as well, but I tend not to favor that position to protect knees a little bit more. Okay, so looking over the top of your knee, you can see the ball of your foot forward. All right, so that is the seat adjustments here. And mine is feeling really good, adjusted properly. Now, upper body is a little bit more a matter of comfort. On a road bike, typically you lean forward more. On a mountain bike, you lean forward a little less. On a cruiser, you're going to be more upright. The big difference in your lean is how much you're going to be able to engage your butt muscles, because your butt muscles, your gluteus maximus, is the one that's responsible for opening up your hip. So the bigger lean you have, the more potential you have to use your butt. Now that said, when you're indoor cycling, you don't need to be in a right position because you're not moving through air. So we want to have a balance of form and comfort. So when you're adjusting your upper body, think 20 to 45 degrees on your torso lean. And then for your arms, you'll want an 80 to 90 degree angle here from torso to arm. If you're reaching farther than that, that's too far, and you'll want to adjust your handlebars closer to you. That puts too much strain on your shoulders and on your neck. You're going to feel it, shoulders and neck. So 80 to 90 degrees here. And the secret to your handlebar height and handlebar fore aft are those two things, torso lean and reach, but also how much weight you feel in your seat versus your hands. So on a road bike, typically it's 60% weight in your butt, 40% out in your hands. Mountain biking, it's 70% because you're in a little more upright position, 30% out in your hands. So somewhere between 60 to 70% of your weight in your butt, 30 to 40% out in your hands for a stationary bike. If you don't feel that, like right now, I feel like I've got 80% of the weight in my butt. So what I would do is, instead of bringing the handlebars closer to me, it's almost reverse. I'm going to lower the handlebars and push them a little bit away, because that will drive my hips into the saddle a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is drop this down a little bit and push out a little bit here. And then I'll want to double check that torso lean and reach again. So my arms are looking good. I've got the 80 to 90 degree angle, torso to arm. And now I feel like I'm a little more 30% out of my hands, 70% in my seat. And that's going to be good. You want to be able to have a nice light grip on the handlebars. Okay. So those are the important elements of bike fit. If you want a checklist, at the end I'll share my email. You can email me and I'll send you a checklist that has all of those things on it, plus the body comfort tips that we'll have. Okay, so I think we can whip through a few of these slides. So there's that 25 to 35 degree bend in the knee. Here is our plumb bob that I'm hanging from Matt's knee there, doing the measurement. And then this is the view. Can you guys see the slide? Or I think you see something a little differently than I do. Okay, good, thank you. So this is the view when the seat is too far back. This is the view over your knee when the seat is too far forward. And then this is the correct view. When you are looking at your feet, when they are parallel to the ground, you should be able to see that ball of your foot forward. So that bottom picture is what you want to see of your own foot when you're figuring out if your seat is in the correct place. Okay, back to the torso arm. Now let's talk about comfort a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and we talked about that. Yes. When you are on your bike, balls of feet on the pedals, you want to think about pushing into the back of the saddle. Now you can get off your bike, just a hip rotation, a pelvic tilt. So when you're on your seat, you don't want to be arched in your back. You don't want to be totally tucked here, but you want to find that neutral position where you feel like your sit bones are giving the most pressure in the back of the saddle. That's where the padding is. You don't want to feel like you're the nose of the saddle. That is not comfortable for anyone. So when you're on your bike, if you rock your hips back and forth, do a couple pelvic tilts here, both fore and aft, and then find that spot where you really feel like those sit bones are connecting. You'll want to, and you can do that while you're sitting up and not holding on. So rock, 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 and find that spot that feels neutral. Now, instead of tilting forward with your pelvis to reach the handlebars, you will want to keep your pelvis in that position so that you've got the pressure on the back of your seat, and fold forward at your waist. So it is a little bit of a C curl, a little bit of a tuck here as you're reaching forward. You always want to think push into the back of the saddle. If you start to feel the nose of your saddle really talking to you, too much pressure on the front, just do that little bit of a hip tuck and push into the back. This is definitely a learned. It takes practice. When you're feeling that nose of the saddle on your sensitive areas and you just want to release that pressure, so to release it, push into the back of the saddle. You can even push away from the handlebars a little bit to help with that. Okay, so balls of feet on pedals, sit bones in the back of the saddle, fairly flat back. You don't want to be arched either way, flat back. With your shoulders, go ahead and take a big breath in right now. Bring your shoulders all the way up to your ears. Exhale and drop them down. That's where you want your shoulders when you ride, nice and relaxed. Soft bend in your elbows. I like to think of it as pasta. Instead of stiff arms or overcooked pasta, too bent, you want to have that nice slight bend in your elbows so that your arms can act as a shock absorber. When you're outside, circulation, both when you're inside and outside. Wrists are the next thing. So with your hands, you want to have a nice long line from your forearm to the top of your hand, and then you grip on the tops or on the sides. You do not want to cock your wrist. When you cock your wrist, you put a lot of pressure on your nerve through the carpal tunnel, and your hands may go numb. So roll that wrist so that it's nice long alignment. The weight of the handlebars goes in the meaty part of the palm of your hands. When you're inside, you need to hang on. You just rest those palms of hands on the handlebars, and you can just wiggle your fingers. Okay, so grip is the last part. You don't need to hang, especially inside riding. You're not. If your hands go numb, it can be one of, if you get shoulder or neck pain. You may be gripping too tight, you might have a cocked wrist, your arms might be stick straight, or your shoulders might be up to your ears. So when you find your shoulders up by your ears, take that big breath in, exhale, think relax all the way down the chain. I often remind our cyclists to take that big breath in and relax. And I remind myself too, because as you're working harder and harder, sometimes your shoulders creep up. Okay, so drop them down. Okay, now pedal stroke. I love talking about this because there is more to cycling than just pushing down on the pedals. To do this, you must be attached to the pedals, so either by toe cages or clipped in. So if you are on your bike, you can practice this with me now. When you are in the power phase, that's the push down part, you're primarily using your butt muscles and your quads. So butt opens your hip, quads straighten your leg. So butt and quads on the way down. On the way back up, you're using hamstrings and hip flexors. But you can only if you are attached to the pedals, because otherwise you can't lift up on the pedals. So I'm going to pop on here, and we're going to talk about those 4 parts of the pedal stroke. If you're on your bike, go ahead and add enough tension so that you can feel a little resistance, and just push down on the pedals. When you're pushing down on the pedals, you should feel the ball of your foot pressing against the sole of your shoe. This is the easy learned when you. Next part is the bottom stroke. So, and this is one you can only do if you're attached to the pedals. You will pull with your heel toward the wall behind you, scrape mud off the bottom of your shoe, or you're a bull about to charge. So pull forcefully with each foot toward the wall behind you. If you're on your bike, try that right now. Pull back. And in this pullback motion, you're using a lot of front of shin and then calf muscle in that transition from muscles. So pulling back, that's called the bottom stroke. Now, when you're on the back part of the pedal stroke, pulling up, I want you to lift up with the top of your foot against the top of your shoe. So lift up as you're coming up on the back side of the pedal stroke. Now, does that add more power to your pedals? Well, it reduces the amount that your downward foot has to push. So yes, your lifting up aids in the push down. So lift up on those pedals as you're pedaling, and that's a good technique to use when you're going up hills. Hill climbing, you want to use that lift up because you're going to get more power into that downward drive. And then over the top, that's the top stroke, you want to kick forward like you're kicking a ball with the toe of each foot as you're going. And when you do all of those things, it feels like you're trying to pedal a circle bigger than your pedals want to allow. And that is when you'll start to see efficiency in your pedal stroke. You'll use all of those leg muscles a little more effectively. If you have an RPM meter, how fast you're pedaling, your RPM will stop bouncing around. You will start getting smoother and being able to hold an RPM at a certain level for instead of it being, if you're trying to hold, say, 85 RPM, instead of it being 80, and then 90, and then 80, and then 90, and 87, and 92, it stays a lot closer to that 85 RPM. When you start using all those four parts of the pedal stroke, in our Cycle program and in Healthy Knees, we practice that. And so we'll do 30 seconds at each of the four pedal strokes, and then reduce that to 15 seconds each of the pedal strokes. You can do this at home. And then start blending it together, feeling like you're trying to pedal a circle bigger than the pedals want to allow. That'll feel like 4 around. And that's a big part of becoming a more efficient cyclist and smarter with how you pedal. Now, pedal speed is another thing I'm pretty strict about indoor. So I don't like to go any slower than 60 RPM. That's reserved for heavy, hard hill climbing, or faster than 110. In many of the spinning programs, they've got you up at 120, 130 RPM, and often people have very little tension on their pedals. And so what happens is this flywheel on a stationary bike carries some momentum, and when you get going super fast, that momentum starts pushing your feet instead of you being in control when you don't have much tension on it. And you might start bumping in the saddle because your feet are starting to push you. Anytime when you're cycling at a faster RPM, and you feel like you're starting to bump in the saddle, that means your bike is starting to control you. So you'll want to either slow down in how fast you're pedaling, or add a little bit of tension and work harder in order to earn that speed. So if people are like, well, I want to pedal really fast, then what I say is pedal 110 RPM and add more gears, add more tension, because that's what's going to make you stronger and keep you in control of what you're doing. Because if you think of 130 RPMs, that's 130 pedal strokes per minute. That's 130 times, if you are not in control, that your knee can be out of alignment and you can do something to tweak your knee. We don't want that to happen. So we want you to stay in control all of the time. I like to see people become very comfortable at 85 to 90 RPM as a base. And many of the studies that I've read have shown that that will help you to be more efficient in your muscle recruitment while you're cycling. Okay. This muscle engagement, I love this picture. That's exactly what I was talking about. So on the downstroke, again, it's when you are doing this hip hinge movement, that's your glute. When you are straightening your leg, that's your quads. So as you're pedaling down, it's your glutes and quads. As you're pedaling up, hamstrings, because that's what lifts your leg up, and hip flexor muscles, that's what lifts your thigh up. We want to engage those as much as we can when we pedal. That'll make us stronger. I threw in a couple of happy slides from people who've been in our program. Melissa she'd been an outdoor cyclist. She wasn't sure if she was going to learn anything in here, but she is just so happy that all of these tips and techniques have actually helped her become stronger when she rides outside. Okay, so how to get stronger. Now that we've worked on technique and body position and being smarter about pedal stroke, there are 3 physiological systems that you want to train while you are riding. So I depend heavily on many cycling resources when I put together the plans for CycleMoles. And Joe Friel, the Cyclist Training Bible, if you want to read a very thorough how to put together a plan, it's geared more for racers, but absolutely love that book. Okay, so stamina, the ability to continue working by delaying the onset of muscle fatigue. Force, the ability to overcome resistance, think hills. So when you add gears, you're adding resistance to your pedaling. And speed skills, the ability to move quickly and efficiently. You're like, I don't really care so much about speed. Well, think dog chasing you outside, right? You're going to want that speed to pedal away from that dog at any moment. So speed skill has to do with muscle coordination and neuromuscular control. When you add force plus stamina, you get muscle endurance. When you add speed plus stamina, you get anaerobic endurance, and that gives you that ability to work at higher heart rates for longer. Force plus speed is power. That's that ability to do a very hard amount of work for a short time. All right. Terry, another one of our CycleMoles, he was a grizzled outdoor rider and thought he might try coming to the CycleMoles program. And he just really appreciated having the coaching tips, all this information that I'm giving you right now, and then some, because it's a whole new world. If people hadn't taught me this, I wouldn't know it either. Okay, so how to become more powerful. I'm just checking time here. I don't want to overrun things. So when you're creating a training plan at home, because there are things you want to do at certain times, you want to think about your training stress. What are your work to rest ratios? What are the types of intervals that you'll go through? Are you going to work on hills? Are you going to work on speed? And then how are you going to ramp it up? So periodized training means that you have a period in which you've created your plan. And during that period, you'll keep building each week in order to continue your muscle growth and stamina without overdoing it at any one of the times. And then you'll recover. Recovery is really important. Recovery is like the most underrated thing, I think, in our society today. Sleep is important. Taking days off from hard exercise is important. It just makes you stronger. So, and then focus, you want to sort of have a focus for the period that you're doing your training. And I just put this up as an example. So in CycleMoles, we have 8-week seasons, and each season focuses on a different aspect of training. The one coming up, the winter season, we're focusing on the mid to high aerobic base building. So all last fall, we were focusing on low base. If you are familiar with heart rate training, then you'll understand there are zones in heart rate training. And I'll just pull out this sign here and show this to you. So when we're doing our training, we talk about 5 zones. And zone 1 is easy, so you're breathing easy. Zone 2 is moderate. You're working but feel like you could do that work for a long time. Zone 3 is hard, and you are breathing hard. So that's maybe a few minutes effort, but we work to build your stamina to be able to do more longer here. This is 90 to 93% effort we call zone 4, And that's just that top end of what you can sustain before you start panting really hard. And when you start panting really hard, you know you're at that max effort. True max effort is 10 or 15 seconds. But we want to develop this ability to go hard, that really high, hard level for longer and longer periods. You won't be able to do it for hours, but if you can start to do it for 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes maybe, then you're starting to really develop your whole aerobic system. And we want to develop your aerobic system because that's all about your heart. Your heart is your most important muscle. So in the aerobic training, we want to have your efficient engine, that zone 2, and that's where you're primarily fat burning. Before you start adding in carbohydrate fuel, your body stores about 2,000 calories of carbohydrates, glycogen, in your muscles and in your liver. And so it's a limited store. So the thing, I just want to talk about the fallacy of the fat burning zone. When you are exercising, your body converts energy from a couple of primary sources, either fat or carbohydrates. And there's phosphates, but that's a very limited amount of energy. So you've got your aerobic engine running all of the time. And it's a relatively slower process for creating energy for your muscles. When your aerobic engine is running at its peak, your heart rate will be at a certain rate. When your effort raises above that, you need more fuel than your aerobic system can offer. So your aerobic system is still working. You're still burning that fat-based source of fuel. And then you start adding in your, I like to think of it as your turbocharged fuel, your carbohydrate fuel. So for those harder, heavier efforts, you're adding in the carbohydrates. It doesn't mean that you're using less fat, it just means that you're also adding in carbohydrates. So you will ultimately burn more calories when you are working at that higher, harder level. I hope that makes sense. I get frustrated when I hear people say, but I want to just be in the fat burning zone. Well, you're always in the fat burning zone, but sometimes you're also in the carbohydrate burning zone. Okay, so one of the things that I want to mention is that when you're training, it is not the smartest plan to go hard all of the time. It's kind of like a rubber band. If you hold that rubber band out all of the time, it may eventually snap. And you may eventually crash and feel like, I just can't go on. I'm exhausted. I feel like I'm doing all this hard work and I'm not getting anywhere. Okay, so we are going to have a good amount of time for some questions here. To sum it up, we went through getting smarter with bike fit, body position, and pedaling technique, getting stronger by training your physiological abilities, becoming more powerful by having a plan to put all of that together. And the obvious question is, how do you do this? Because it's not so simple. You can put it together yourself. That Joe Friel's Cycling Training Bible is a really good solution. There's many other options out there. I've written a couple of books that talk about cycling. Healthy Knee Cycling is one of them. Or you can do a program that's already done for you. And that's why we put together the CycleMoles performance training program. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this, but that is a simple solution for your indoor training. We're doing it via Zoom now, and some of the people who've been in our program aren't even cyclists. Like Sandy is a runner, and she was just feeling like her body was hurting so much from running all those miles that she needed something to cross-train, and has loved the cross-training effect that she's getting from cycling. Okay, so if you're interested in the CycleMoles program, our next session starts on January 4th. I'll just kind of whip through all of this. And here's how it works. We have twice a week live Zooms, Mondays and Wednesdays from 7 to 8 a.m., and then we record those Zooms, and it goes into our Mole Hole library. So when you join in CycleMoles, you get the benefit of all of the seasons of work. So right now we have 60-some videos in our library. And we also have a weekly core progression, because your core is important for cycling. So on the weekly core progression, there's an advancement every week. We have 5 essential moves that we do. We do 20 of each. That gives you 100 core moves. And it's fun to kind of be in there with a group of people who are doing the same thing, even though you're at home. Okay, so, oh yeah, and I'll touch on that. If you're like, I don't know, maybe I want to try it. We do have a free week, essentially. So sign up for the program, try the first week for free. If you don't like it, we'll refund your money. No problem. And then here's the pricing for it. We have it set up a couple ways. It's $179 for the whole 8-week series, or you can make 2 payments of $97. And here's our schedule. So our next season starts January 4th. It goes through February 24th. We have 16 classes in that time. And if you want to, oh gosh, I've got all these great testimonials. If you want to enroll, go to cyclemoles.com. There's a lot of information there. You can read more about the program, and then there's a button that you can click to sign up. Okay, so here is my email. If you'd like to receive that checklist for your bike fit, just email me and I'll send that back to you. It's got the bike fit and body comfort tips checklist on there. Or if you have any other questions about cycling that I might be able to help with, or anything really, I'm happy to help. Just shoot me an email, robin@betrainingtennis.com. And I'm going to go ahead and open it up to question and answer. So I should know how to minimize the share screen. So I'm going to turn off the share screen for now so that I can see if you have any questions. Okay, and I'm going to open up the chat. Oops. And if you, I cannot hear you in my current setup. So go ahead and just add it into the chat, any question. And if we want, I think I can unplug my headset and then I'd be able to hear you. So let's see if there are any questions. I don't see any yet. Okay, there we go. I don't yet have a bike and I don't want to get a lemon. Oh, good question. I live in a studio and my budget is $400. Any makers you suggest? Boy, there are so many good options out now. And what I would do is, if you can, I don't know if you're local, but if you are local or wherever you are, and see what they have to offer. I would not buy a bike from somewhere like Target, because pony placeable. That's the big difference between the really expensive bikes and variety store bike, is that the ones that are sold in the variety stores usually have components that are not high quality and may break. There are really good bikes starting at about $800. Another option that you can think of is getting a refurbished bike. And in town here, Earl's, which is on Meridian, does a really nice job of refurbishing bikes. So they do consignment bikes. I've sold a couple bikes through them. They take apart the entire bike, clean it, make sure everything works, and you may be able to find a bike in that, a high quality bike in that $400 range budget at Earl's. So I'd check them out first to see if they have a great bike that's used that will fit you, and now you know a little bit more about fit. So you can go in a little smarter to see if they have a bike that's going to work for you. Otherwise, most bikes that are good quality with replaceable parts start in that maybe $750 range up to $1,500. I know that's a big range. When you get over $1,500, you're talking more about making the bike a little lighter weight or fancier components, things made of titanium, or super light carbon. But you don't necessarily need that to have a good quality bike. And then you can mount your bike to a trainer, and let me just show you what that looks like. Hang on a second. This is a great option for creating a stationary bike out of your outdoor bike, because then you're getting a 2-for-1. Now, a decent trainer like this is going to run around $300. You don't need the fancy trainers. This is a fluid trainer by the other is Cyclops. Oh gosh, there's another name to it, but if you look up Cyclops, Cycleops, they have a good fluid trainer too. Same price, about $300. The magnetic trainers are okay. They won't last as long. These trainers I've had for like 10 years, and they just keep on working. So your rear axle is mounted here. There's a cylinder at the bottom that you bring up to put on your back tire of the bike, and that creates the tension. So you'll be able to shift gears when you're on your indoor bike on a trainer. That's what I use at home. I love it. I think it works great. Okay, hopefully that answered your question. Good. What else? What else can I help with? Anybody? Questions? Type them in the chat.
Robin, can you hear me?
Yes.
No?
Do I have any recommendations for a stationary bike? Oh boy, there's so many out on the market now. I love what we have here. This is the Kaiser M3i. And I think Cyclops has a bike as well. The bikes like Peloton. The Peloton bike runs about $2,000 to $2,500, depending on what you're looking for. But here's the thing. If you're looking for a stationary bike, it has the 4 points for adjustment. So, seat, up and down. Seat, fore and aft. So your seat can go farther away from the handlebars. Most bikes are going to have that. Handlebars up and down. Most bikes are going to have this. What many of the stationary bikes don't have is the ability to adjust the handlebars closer to or farther away from your body. So what I see oftentimes with some of those bikes is that people are positioned like this because they can't adjust the handlebars closer, and that's way too much of a strain. It's going to put a lot of strain on your shoulders and on your neck. So, like you choose. Echelon is another company that seems to be pretty good. Many of them right now are coming with programs that you can follow, not on the bike, but streaming programs. So Peloton, Echelon, Schwinn, I think even has a good one. Schwinn's a great stationary bike. The Kaiser here is very simple. The other thing you want to look for in a stationary bike is what kind of information you're going to get when you ride. So the minimal is RPM. You want to know how fast you're pedaling. The other thing I love about this bike is there's a gear shifter, and it tells you what gear you are in. And then it also has watts. Watts is a measure of power. And so when you're riding and you start to hit higher watts, you know you're getting stronger. A good goal for watts is 1 watt per pound of body weight. So if you weigh 150 pounds, then you want to shoot at a hard effort for 150 watts. If 150 watts is no problem, then you want to start doubling your weight, trying to shoot for 300 watts in that big power. So having RPM, a gear readout so you know where you are. Many bikes have a knob you turn for creating tension or taking tension off, but no gear readout. And then watts are key, and ask how they calculate the watts. Are they measured or are they calculated? Measurement is the most accurate way to create watts, and not all watts on bikes are the same. The ones that use a calculation to create the watts are not very accurate, in my opinion. The measurement watts, there's a little torque meter on the cables that are measuring how fast you're pedaling and how much tension is on your bike. That's how watts are calculated. That's going to be your best measure. So I love the Kaiser M3i bike, but if you have an outdoor bike, just pop it on a trainer and you're going to be able to get some of those same results. You might not have watts on your trainer, but that's okay. Okay, next question was, can you repeat the elements that may lead to numb hands? Yes. 4 elements. What are the bike part adjustments to make, okay, to counter numbness? All right, so about numb hands, what do you do if your hands go numb? So, let's see if I totally made my bike crazy. This again. There are 4 parts to hand numbness. 1 is shoulders up by your ears. 2 is straight arms. If your arms are straight, it actually limits circulation. So slight bend in your elbows. Relax those shoulders, slight bend in your elbows. Cocked wrist is one that I often see people with. So I'm not sure if you can see my hands that great, but I'm going to cock my wrists right now. So I'm putting pressure on my wrists. You want to instead roll that hand so you've got that nice long flat line from forearm to top of hand, and put the weight of the handlebars right here in the biggest part of your hand. You don't need to grip them in the middle. Put the weight of the handlebars on your meaty part of the palm of your hands, and then light grip. Even when you're outside, you want to have a grip tighten the bike in, but not so tight that you are creating a lot of tension in your grip. So nice light grip. And if any one or more of those are happening, so tight grip, rocked hands, straight elbows, shoulders up to your ears, your hands may go numb, or you may start to get some neck and back pain as well. That's a great question, and that's one that people have a hard time with. Another one is numb feet. So if your toes start going numb, indoor, that may be a different situation than outdoor. So indoor, and so I'm just grabbing a pair of cycling shoes here. Regular athletic shoes, I'm going to whip off my shoe here, are meant to bend. And when you are pedaling, you may be bending your foot when you're pedaling, and that can tire out your feet and make them sore. Bike shoes, on the other hand, are a very stiff sole. They don't bend. I'm trying to bend this shoe, I can't bend the shoe. So there is no bend in your foot. And that gives you the opportunity to have a good insole inside your shoe. And all of that power then that you're pedaling is going right into the pedal instead of losing some of the power in the flex of your shoe. I highly recommend cycling shoes for both indoor and outdoor. And then you can mount cleats on your shoes. So you can see there's a cleat here, and that snaps right into the pedal so that you're locked to the pedal. If you haven't done that outside yet and you're like, I don't know, starting inside with cleats is a great way to get used to the feeling and used to clipping in. I really recommend that because you're going to get more power into your pedals and you'll get more out of your cycling experience because you're more stable with the bike. So this is called SPD cleat. It kind of looks like a spade on a playing card. I don't know if you can really see it. I'll just sort of tip it there. It's the typical cleat that most spinning bikes have, and you can get pedals that have both sides. So like on these pedals, one side is the cleat, and then the other side has the toe cage. So you don't have to have, and it has just a flat pedal here. You don't have to have bike shoes on to use it, but if you do, and you have the SPD cleats, you can clip right into that pedal. I love, and yes, so if you're new to having cleats in your shoes and you go outside and ride, inevitably, you come up to a stop sign and forget that your feet are locked in and you go and fall over. It's not very fun. I've done it way too many times, especially if I'm changing my cleat system, because there's a bunch of different manufacturers of cleats. SPD is just the most common for indoor bikes. And a note about cleats, when you're locked into where you mount your cleat on your shoe really matters, because you want to make sure that the cleat is aligned to support your natural action of your foot with your body, and that it's aligned on the ball of your foot. So you can find out where your bunion bone is and your little toe bone is, mark your shoe, and then that cleat should bisect that line. Usually it's a line that cuts across, it's a little bit of an angle. You want the cleat right in the center of that line, and the center of the cleat in the center of that line. And then the alignment of the cleat, where this is pointing, if you walk with your feet duck-footed, then you'll probably want to adjust your cleat to support that a little bit. If you're pigeon-toed, same thing, because a cleat misadjusted can cause knee pain. So that's another thing to look at if you're mounting cleats to your bikes. And I'm always happy to have a look at you and your shoes and your cleats to see if it looks like it's the right alignment for you. I can help you that way too. Okay, let's see what else. Okay, got that. I think we might be wrapping up with, are there any more questions from anyone? Anything? Oh, I could talk about cycling all day, and I'm ever so happy to do that. If you are an outdoor cyclist, and if events are allowed to happen, next summer, my husband and I are trying to get the biggest group that we can to ride the RAGBRAI, which is a ride that goes across Iowa from west to east. It's a week-long event. Typically, there's 10,000 people. I don't know if they're going to run it with all of the things going on, but that's our goal in our cross-country journey to start in Iowa next summer. So if you're interested, just let me know, and I can tell you our team name, and you can get signed up for that too. That's awesome. All right, you guys, well, thank you so much for coming. I think it's time that I wrap up. It's 9 o'clock. I'm happy to have shared this time with you, and email me, robin@betrainingtennis.com, if you have any questions, or if you want that, that free sheet that has the checklist of the bike fit and the body comfort tips. I'm happy to send that to you. Okay, you guys, thanks so much. Have a great ride. I'll see you outside someday. Bye-bye.